All right, good afternoon, and thank you all for joining NCDEQ for our Volkswagen Settlement Level 2 Public Access Program webinar. I'm Stephen Rice, an environmental specialist for the Division of Air Quality and a Level 2 Program Manager, and I'm joined by additional DAQ staff who manage other aspects of the Volkswagen Settlement. A few housekeeping rules before we get started. All attendees will be muted during today's webinar. Questions can be submitted in the Q&A box and will be addressed during the question and answer time if not covered in the presentation. The raise hand feature will be disabled until the question and answer time and will only be considered for those who called into the webinar by phone. For those calling in, pressing *3 will raise your hand and pressing *3 again will lower your hand. All other attendees must use the Q&A box to submit questions, and please send questions to the general Q&A and not directly to specific panelists. Also, this webinar is being recorded and would be made available on the DAQ Volkswagen website at a later date. Finally, we have 2 hours scheduled to discuss the program and the application process, but if we complete everything and answer all questions with time to spare, we have the option to adjourn early. If we are not able to answer all questions by the end of our time, we will let you know how to get your questions to us. When today's presentation becomes available on the DAQ Level 2 website, be aware that links found in the slides will only be active when used in presentation mode. So, today's webinar will cover an overview of the Level 2 Public Access Program and its application process, information on when and how to submit your application, information on what happens to your application once it is submitted, information on where to find answers after this webinar, and a time for questions and answers. I would like to remind attendees that this is not a public forum for comments on the implementation of the Volkswagen settlement. The RFP for the Level 2 Public Access Program was released on March 21st. The Level 2 program overview found in the RFP states that NCDEQ is allocating the full 15% allowed in the Volkswagen State Trust Agreement for Zero Emission Vehicle, or ZEV, infrastructure projects outlined in the NC Mitigation Plan. NCDEQ will give 70% of the Phase 2 ZEV infrastructure allocation to DC fast charging infrastructure projects and 30% to the Level 2 charging infrastructure projects. This program has over $1 million available for the funding of new, publicly accessible Level 2 charging stations. The primary goal is to increase use of ZEVs in place of gas-powered cars to mitigate nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, and greenhouse gas emissions in the state. To achieve that goal, the program will emphasize adding new ZEV charging infrastructure in underserved areas, extend the existing light-duty ZEV infrastructure across the state, encourage intrastate and interstate ZEV vehicle usage at North Carolina's diverse geographic, historic, and tourist attractions, and highlight the environmental benefits of ZEVs. The application for the Public Access Program will be available in the Grant Management System, or GMS, on May 2nd, and applications will be accepted and approved on a first-come, first-served basis until the funds are exhausted. The Public Access Program will assist interested parties in applying for funds to install light-duty ZEV Level 2 charging infrastructure as described in the North Carolina Volkswagen Mitigation Plan. In Phase 1, publicly accessible projects were eligible for funding but did not have their own specific program. Out of the 79 agreements for Level 2 projects in Phase 1, 70 had the designation of publicly accessible. After seeing the natural desire for applicants to provide Level 2 charging that was accessible to the general public, we decided to make it a point of emphasis in Phase 2. I will discuss the changes from Phase 1 to Phase 2 for this program throughout today's presentation, but something that hasn't changed that I want to mention right off the bat is that this is a reimbursement program. Applicants must be willing and able to purchase and install level 2 charging equipment using their own funds. Also, just like in phase 1, applicants are limited to $25,000 in approved rebate vouchers at any time. Something new in phase 2 is that the rebate vouchers for awarded projects will expire after 1 year from the date of an agreement which is fully executed. The pandemic and supply chain issues made the original phase 1 timeframe of 180 days borderline impossible for most awardees, so we decided to learn from experience and double the time in phase 2. Here we see a table of all the available funding for ZEV programs in phase 2. The Public Access Program is the second Level 2 program to have its RFP released, but more importantly to you, it commands just over a third of the total Level 2 funding with $1,070,877 to distribute. So who is eligible to apply for Public Access Program funding? The general list from the RFP is found here, and as long as you are not applying on behalf of yourself, considered a North Carolina state agency, or providing charging for workplace or multi-unit dwelling purposes, you should be an eligible applicant. State agencies, workplaces, and MUDs have their own RFPs and funding amounts separate from the Public Access Program. Specific details on applicant eligibility are found in the Level 2 Public Access RFP. The RFP identifies two types of locations that are eligible for Level 2 ZEV charging infrastructure funding: government-owned property and non-government-owned property. You may have assumed by the name of the program, but these properties must be publicly accessible, where all chargers are available to the public for an annual average of 12 hours per day without restriction. The option for non-publicly accessible chargers is no longer available in phase 2 of this program, and multi-unit dwellings and employee or fleet-only charging is reserved for future Level 2 programs. The type of property a project is on will determine the maximum percentage of the total project cost reimbursement. If a project is on government-owned property and offers public access, it can be reimbursed at $5,000 per port or up to 100% of the project cost, whichever is less. Or if a project is on non-government-owned property and offers public access, it can be reimbursed at $4,000 per port or up to 80%, again, whichever is less. So, for example, let's say a project was to be on non-government-owned property and consists of installing 4 Level 2 chargers. If all the quotes for the project total $22,000, then the calculated maximum rebate offered, and then the two rebate options would be $16,000 for the 2 ports at, for the 4 ports at $4,000, or $17,600, 80% of the $22,000. Since the program uses the lesser of the two calculations, the maximum rebate offered would be $16,000 for this project. Please be aware that multiple project types cannot be incorporated into a single application, and that all chargers, regardless of the project type, must be available to the public for an annual average of 12 hours per day without restriction. You will need to attach proof of this to your application or attest to this requirement in the project details of your application. We will talk about that later. Like all Volkswagen programs, there are a number of project and site requirements that should be considered before you apply for funding. For example, each Level 2 public access project must have a minimum of 2 ports. Each installed Level 2 charging station must be connected to a network by wired Ethernet, Wi-Fi, or cellular connection, and each charger must be maintained and operated for a minimum of 5 years from the date of project completion. The full list of project requirements is found in the RFP. All site requirements from phase 1 have carried over to phase 2, but there are a few requirements that are new to phase 2. Examples of new requirements are that sites must be available for use of the public. And again, this is for all projects. and that on-site signs must be metallic, have minimum dimensions of 12 by 18 inches with the required text being a minimum of 1.28 inches in height and mounted on a post at the charger parking spaces. These dimensions and requirements are industry standard. A repeat requirement is that a project must include at least one designated and clearly marked EV parking space per port. The full list of site requirements is outlined in the RFP. A new aspect of this Phase 2 program is a focus on charger accessibility. Accessibility is outlined in the site requirements and helps ensure that projects must make every effort to be ADA compliant and follow all applicable laws, ordinances, regulations, and standards. Additional reference materials regarding accessibility for public charging stations can be found on the Plugin NC web page, which is linked in this slide and is also found in the RFP. The Volkswagen State Mitigation Trust Agreement states that trust funds may be used on costs necessary for and directly connected to the acquisition, installation, operation, and maintenance of new light-duty ZEV supply equipment. The following items are all considered eligible expenditures, and this list, plus a list of ineligible expenditures, are both found in the public access RFP. So now that we've covered the background and requirements of the public access program, let's transition into the process of submitting an application. Thankfully, not much has changed here between Phase 1 and Phase 2, but we'll still cover the process from beginning to end, starting with the fact that NCDEQ will still only accept applications submitted through the NCDEQ grant management system. Prior to using the grant management system, applicants must obtain an NCID and then complete and submit the online Enterprise Business Services external request application. This request application is an updated version of the Grants Management System Access Authorization Form from Phase 1 and makes the process of gaining access to the GMS easier than before. When you complete the request application, you should also complete and email the State of North Carolina Substitute W-9 form to daq.nc_bwgrants@ncdenr.gov. To request access to the DAQ Grants Management System, you will first need an NCID. In this slide, I have provided links for NCID registration, as well as the how to create an NCID guide, and I will walk through the steps of creating an NCID after the next slide. We'll begin with some important NCID information. If you already have an individual or government NCID, there is no need to create a new NCID. If you are a current user of the NCDOT grant system, you do not need a new NCID and can use your current EBS username on the GMS access request application. Also, once you have completed an NCID request, you will receive a new NCID user registration email from ncid.notifications@nc.gov. You must click the link in that email and follow the instructions to complete the registration of your NCID before submitting the GMS access authorization form or the external request application. To begin the process of creating an NCID for GMS access, you need to go to ncid.nc.gov and click the register link, which is highlighted on this slide. You'll be taken to the new user registration page where you'll find and click the individual NCID option, also highlighted here. Now you'll enter in information into the text fields. There are no requirements on what your NCID username should be when it comes to the GMS, but in general, it should be easy for you to remember. When the required information is all entered, click the Continue button. Now the system needs to verify your information. A code was sent to the email address you provided, which you will need to enter here. Here's an example of the verification email containing that 6-digit code, which needs to be entered into the field from the previous slide. After entering the code and clicking Check Code, you'll receive a confirmation that your information has been verified. Click Continue to see the remaining setup steps. At this stage, you will need to create security questions and answers to activate your NCID account. Click the Continue button to complete this step. You see here there are 5 security questions that need to be configured for your account. Once the questions are selected and the answers are provided, click Save Answers. And this completes the NCID creation process. If you experience issues with your NCID and/or password, you'll need to go to the ncid.nc.gov webpage to retrieve your username, retrieve your password, or to unlock your account. There is a Need Help link on that page as well for other NCID problems. It is our experience that NCID passwords expire about 90 days, and you should receive an email beforehand alerting you to this. But please be aware, if you go a long time without updating that password, you might need to request the assistance on the NCID webpage to unlock your account or to get a new password. So it's important, we really want to put in this slide that you must read and follow all the directions on the next slides to request access to the DAQ Grants Management System and then be approved before you can log into the system. Approved means that you received a Welcome to the DAQ Enterprise Business System portal email. And in a previous slide, I mentioned that the Enterprise Business Services External Request Application is an updated version of the GMS Access Authorization form from Phase 1. When you complete the request application, you should also complete and email the State of North Carolina Substitute W-9 form to daq.nc_VWgrants@ncdenr.gov. Please note that just like in Phase 1, an organization can have up to 3 authorized users in the GMS at a time, and that once the authorization is processed, you will receive an email from NCDOT ITSAP Support Services. So here we see part of the State of North Carolina Substitute W-9 form. This form allows DAQ to set up an organization with new GMS users in the North Carolina accounting system in order to receive reimbursement payments. For all new GMS users, we encourage you to submit the EBS application and the W-9 form as soon as possible. We encourage you to fill in all documents electronically versus by hand. So in cases where an applicant has a third party submitting applications on their behalf, the following procedures must be followed. The applicant must provide in writing, and an email is sufficient, that they are authorizing the third party to submit applications and other information on their behalf. The third party will need to obtain their own NCID and submit a DAQ access authorization request application with the applicant's organization address information and the third party's phone number and email address. The letter or email should be sent along with the organization's W-9 form, again to the NCVW Grants email address. So at this point, you may be feeling a bit overwhelmed with all the procedure and information needed just to apply. Especially if this is your first time applying for Volkswagen funding, you're definitely not the only one feeling this way. To help make sure that all application requirements are being met, we have created an application checklist which covers the general requirements plus requirements specifically for the Level 2 Public Access Program. The link to this checklist is found in this slide and is also on the DAQ Volkswagen website. All documentation must be included when submitting an application for that application to be reviewed. Now we've come to the Grant Management System overview and demo, where I will tell you how to use the Grants Management System, its tutorials, and how to submit an application. This slide has links to the GMS portal, to GMS guides, and to a sample application found on the public access webpage. I'm going to log into our test GMS system and walk through the steps of submitting an application. Hopefully, we still have access to the test portal and everything goes smoothly. So if you used the link on that previous slide, it will take you to a web page that looks like this. You see Enterprise Business Services and the fields where you would enter your NCID username and password. So once you've logged in and are in the system, you will see a variety of panels on your home page, including portals for frequently asked questions and tutorials. To get to the Volkswagen Level 2 application, you're going to want to click the Division of Air Quality Grants panel, found right here. Clicking that will open a new window. And now you're going to see your account homepage. The layout of this account and your accounts will be a bit different, but ultimately there will be a number of search options for you where the ability to create a new application is found. So let's go through the process of applying for Level 2 Public Access Rebate by clicking Create New Application, found here with some of the other search options. So now that we're in the application form, by clicking Search, you will see a list of available applications. And you can see that this account is set to reference the NCDEQ, DAQ grants, and under the available options, I'm going to click the Phase 2 Level 2 Public Access Program application. Right here, you see that it is hyperlinked. So now I'm going to click it. You'll see that this account isn't set up with an organization. This is something that you will see as well, but you will click search and enter in the applicant description, your organization name, which was given to us when you submitted your access request application, as well as your W-9. For this example, we'll be applying on behalf of the city of not the city of Cary, the town of Cary. Okay. Now I'm looking at the first page or the first tab of the Phase 2 Public Access application. In the Project tab, which we're on, I'm going to enter my project's basic information, starting with the project title. In this case, we'll just do seeing that this is just a test. Then right below, you can see that there are drop-down fields for specifying additional project details, and I'm going to select the appropriate project details and move on to entering the project location information. So this is our only option for our program type. Under equipment type, you will see a few options. These will be for the current application, but also for future applications. We want to make sure that we select the Level 2 charging EMA-9 option specifically for the public access application. Here, the town of Cary would be considered government, so government is chosen. And also, we have options for publicly accessible, non-publicly accessible. For the public access program, we will obviously be choosing publicly accessible. And here we would enter where our charger would be. In this case, we'll just enter in some generic information. we need to include our latitude and longitude, something to have as you are creating your application. And then again, available 12 hours or longer for this program, that is a requirement. So yes will need to be selected. I'm going to see if I've completed this tab properly by clicking the check button. It said that no errors were found. In the case that I'd forgotten to enter some required information or that I entered information incorrectly, I would see an error window pop up and it would direct me to what I needed to do to fix this tab of the application. But seeing that everything is good, and I have now the option to continue to the next application tab by clicking next or to save my progress. If I chose to save and close, I will see a confirmation that my application has been saved, plus the application ID it was assigned to by the GMS. Just a heads up that the GMS will log you out after a period of inactivity. So if you're stepping away from your application for a while, it may be a good idea to click save and close so you don't have to start from scratch. In this case, I'm going to click the next button to continue the application. So this next tab is where I'm going to enter the contact information for the project's authorized representative, the project manager, and the financial contact. While it's possible that one person can fill these three roles, in this example project, we'll have 3 different individuals to enter. I will need to fill in all of these fields or else I will get an error when I click check. And just entering here. And I know I said I would enter 3 different individuals, but let's say that the authorized representative is also the project manager. I can go ahead and click this button to copy the information from the representative fields. And after I click it, you can see that it populates just fine. And let's go ahead and enter another person for our financial contact. All right, after that information is entered, then you can click save and close if you're done and need to come back, or you can click the next button. In the charger details tab, I'm going to enter the requested information for any chargers being installed at the project location. The full list of requirements for a qualifying level 2 project are found in the RFP, but for this tab, please remember that a project in total requires a minimum of 2 ports and at least 1 designated and clearly marked EV parking space per port. Also, each charger must provide at least 6.6 kilowatts of charging power and have a minimum 5-year warranty for equipment and service. Now that I'm ready to enter my chargers, I'm going to click the Add Charger button, which is found right here in the first row. And after that's entered, I see my first charger here, and I can enter in information. For multiple chargers, you can click the Add Chargers button as many times as necessary. So let's say for this project, we have 2 chargers. 2 charge point. One, which is a dual port charger. We're devoting 2 parking spaces, 7.2, and then a warranty period of 5 years. Same thing here. Charge point is the manufacturer. 2 ports, 2 spaces, 5. And you can see between the two chargers, we have the totals entered that autofill down below. Again, at this point, I can click Save and Close or click Next. So in the Funding tab, we can see that my project type and its corresponding information has been highlighted based on the information that I entered in the Project tab. Again, the type of project highlighted here. In this Funding tab, I'm going to need to complete the rebate calculation spreadsheet and then enter the total from the worksheet into the total field here. The link to the spreadsheet is found right here, right next to that entry field, and is also found to download on the Volkswagen website. So let's click and fill that out. Hopefully it opens. Screen. Here we go. Right here at the top, we're going to need to enable editing and enable content. Let's read the instructions. It says that we are to fill in the blue spaces with your project information and check the box that corresponds with the project category. The potential rebate amounts will automatically calculate. And also, upon completion of this worksheet, first save it and then upload it as an attachment with your application in the DAQ grant management system. Okay. So this is a blue field that needs to be entered. We're going to put town of Cary, and then the project title. Let's go back and get this right. Public access charging test. So insert the total number of ports to be installed. Our total from that charger detail tab was four ports. And now that I'm at this point, I need to enter the total project cost from quotes I've received. Let's say all these quotes came to $30,000. So I would enter $30,000 here. I do not have rebates, incentives, or subsidies that would supplement any project cost, so I'm going to leave that field as is. If you have any of those in your application, you will see the dollar amount subtracted from the total project cost. Now that this information is entered, I need to select my project category, which is the default, the first option here of government-owned property and public access. If we look just to the right, we can see the difference between the maximum rebate per charging port amount and the maximum percentage of total project cost, and that the rebate, the calculated rebate amount would be the lesser of the two. And if I scroll down just to show that right here, again, 20,000 would be the $4,000 per port. And then we have, even though our project quotes is 30,000, the maximum a rebate can be is 25,000. So that's where the 20,000 and the 25,000 come up. And the rebate calculator automatically chooses the lesser of the two. So that is where the $20,000 comes from. Let's say that this was non-government owned and public property. You'd see the $4,000 per port or 24,000, and again, it chooses the lesser of the two amounts. But with our accurate selection here and the $20,000 being shown as the calculated rebate amount, we're going to enter that back into the application. Scrolling all the way down, though, we see an area to enter the application site locations. This is especially important for an application that consists of charters at more than one location. We need to have all those locations included in this part of the rebate calculator. So again, now that we know our rebate amount. We're going to enter that manually into this field. If there's a difference in that we find in the review of the application between what is entered here and what is entered or calculated in the spreadsheet, we will have to return that application to address the difference. And just while I'm here, because this worksheet, this calculation worksheet is a required attachment for the application, I'm just going to go ahead and save it so I can show you the process of attaching the worksheet as an application later. And now we have a saved copy. We have the amount entered, and we can proceed to the project details tab. So now that I'm in the project details tab, I'm instructed to describe project procurement, installation, activation and commissioning, testing, and signage. This is where I should note collaborations with interested utilities, local businesses, cities, counties, or other entities, and describe the sustainable business model for the project, the customer support services, and the networking security for both payment and data capture. Please note that there's a limit of 3,000 characters in the text box, and if you want to see an example of what can be entered here, please feel free to check out the sample application on the Level 2 Public Access webpage. For now, since I said this was important and required, I will just add the statement that these chargers are publicly accessible. Okay, so now that I have just something entered in the project details, we'll continue on to the last tab. We've made it to the final tab of the application. Here is where the authorized representative will certify that all proposed activities will be carried out, that all money received will be utilized solely for the purposes for which it is intended, that records documenting the planning process and implementation will be maintained and submitted when requested, and that DEQ is hereby granted access to inspect the project sites and or the records. To show you the two main options at this point in the application, I'm going to click Save and Close before submitting. Oh, but I do need to check this box and enter my name. And the title is what you are either in the application or with the organization. So let's do that for my title. We're going to click Save and Close. All right, so now I see the confirmation that my application has been saved and that the application ID, it was assigned in the GMS. I also see a reminder that my application is not complete until all required documents have been submitted, and that there is a link to the required attachments checklist for me to reference as well. This is one location where I can upload required documents to the GMS. I'm going to select my rebate calculation worksheet and attach it to the application now. So right down here where it says click browse to select a file, this opens up a search window for your computer that you are submitting the application on. I have the rebate calculator right here. I'm hitting enter and attach. Before I click attach though, I would just want to make sure I have this application ID for reference. It's something you can write down or just go ahead, right click and copy, just so it's on hand. But for right now, we want to attach the rebate calculator to my application. So I'm going to click attach. And while there's not a big confirmation that it was successfully attached to the application, we can go in and see that it in fact was attached to the application. I'll be able to confirm this on the grants homepage. So let's go ahead and look at that now. So to view your application or confirm that attachments are part of the application that you have saved, we're going to click View Application. Here you can click Search and your application will come up automatically, or if you have that application ID on hand, you can enter it into this field and click Search. So now you see that our application pops up. I'm going to click the application number right here to view my application. And we can go page by page, tab by tab, through what was submitted, or I'm sorry, through what was saved. We can look at all the information that was entered, contact information, charger details information, all of it will be here. But if we scroll down just a little bit, we see under the attachments portion of our application, we have saved the copy of the NCDAQ rebate calculator. So again, this just goes to show that on that confirmation screen, the process of attaching any sort of documentation to the application it is relatively straightforward and does in fact put that file as part of your application. At this point, let's say that even though there is additional documentation needed for a complete application, that we are ready to submit our application, we're going to go back to our home page, and to officially submit your application, we're going to click the Edit Application Form link. Again, we can click Search, and for those that have submitted or that have saved just one single application, at this point, that one application will come here. Just since we're in test environment and there are multiple applications, I will enter the application ID manually, click Search. And again, we have our saved application pop up. Again, we can see all of the information if we scroll tab to tab. And here, if we need to make any edits to the application before submitting, if contacts for the project have been changed, if you need to kind of reevaluate the chargers being used, you can update it here. Just remember that you, in that case, would need to also attach an updated rebate calculator and updated quotes and charger information. But in the case that everything is ready to be submitted as desired, we would click the Submit button. You get a pop-up that say changes cannot be made after clicking the Submit button. Press OK if you're okay with that. What the Submit button does is take it from your workflow and put it in DAQ's workflow. Once it is in the hands of DAQ, it cannot be changed in any way by the applicant. All right, we get another confirmation page now that it says the application has been submitted successfully. Before it said saved, now we see submitted. The application ID has not changed. This is another opportunity though to copy it for your records. Again, we have the opportunity even after to view the checklist and to add attachments as you need. You cannot edit information in the application tabs, but you can add additional documentation attaching that to your application. And like I said, at this point, the application itself has transitioned from your workflow to DAQ's workflow. And at this point, you have successfully submitted an application. And the last thing I want to show in the GMS really quickly are the DAQ training library examples and guides. You can see here on my homepage, there's a link to the training library. If I click this, it will take me to internal training since this is an internal account. But for you, clicking this link will take you to external training modules, which I have opened here. So by clicking that link, you'll see this module or this list of modules open. We encourage you, once you know you have access to the grants management system, to play around, to educate yourself with these different topics. Again, we kind of went through the process of editing an application before it was submitted. That process is detailed here. We have a step-by-step account of how to do this, as well as a video step-by-step process that will show more or less exactly what I had just done to edit an application before submitting. You can see that it's showing us the video step by step. And this is not for the application that I submitted specifically. This is a general video tutorial, but it does, in fact, it does apply to all applicants. And we see that at this point we can make changes to the application, go back to clicking save or close, where we get the confirmation that we have saved the application successfully, or we could have clicked submit if we were ready to do so and get that separate confirmation page. Again, there are a variety of topics that you can go through, and again, we encourage you to play around. Of course, if you have questions that aren't able to be answered in these guides and these modules, we encourage you to get in touch with us. We'd be more than happy to answer any grants management system related questions. All right, now back to the presentation. I had mentioned earlier that certain things about an application can cause it to be returned to the applicant, or in some instances, cause the application itself to be rejected. What you see on the slide is an example of a return letter that was used in phase 1. If your application is incomplete or needs editing after being submitted, you will receive an email from the GMS with a return letter attached, similar to this one, which will outline what work needs to be done on your application. To make edits to your application, you will use the edit application process that we just explored in live time and also quickly in that module. In phase 1, the most common reason an application was returned was that the applicant did not submit proof or statement in the project details tab, which verified that the chargers in their project would be available to the public for a minimum of 12 hours a day without restriction. I said a couple times in today's presentation that it is very important to include that information. This is a requirement in this public access program, so please make sure that proof is attached to your application or that you include that phrasing in the project details tab when you are submitting your application. Some general tips and things to know. We encourage you not to wait until the week of April 25th to request GMS access. We will be unable to guarantee that you have access to the GMS on May 2nd if you wait this long in the process. So again, if you are interested in applying, please send us the required information as soon as possible. Budget information that is included in the application should be as accurate as possible. DEQ reserves the right to partially fund awarded projects. We will not accept paper, scanned, emailed, or faxed applications. We will not accept applications. I'm sorry, there's no due date. That's a carryover from another program. But we will not accept applications after all the funds are exhausted. Uh, do not sign any agreements or invoices with vendors or start any kind of work until your agreement is fully executed with NCDEQ, and an application award is not a fully executed agreement. Just like in phase one, there will be quarterly, annual, and final project reporting requirements for all awarded projects. The templates for these types of reports are found on the forms page of the DAQ Volkswagen website. DAQ staff will perform site visits at all stations to verify installation and operation of their charging station prior to approval of any reimbursement claim. DAQ staff will be granted access to the charging site. That is a requirement of accepting an award. So in closing, the application for the public access program will be available in the grant management system come May 2nd, and applications will be accepted on a first come, first served basis until funds are exhausted. Again, please do not wait until the last week of April to request GMS access. This is a reimbursement program. Applicants must be willing and able to purchase and install level 2 charging equipment using their own funds. Applicants are limited to $25,000 in approved rebate vouchers at any time, and rebate vouchers for awarded projects will expire after 1 year from the date of an agreement that is fully executed. Here, we're looking at the timeline for the public access program. Please note that after May 2nd, DAQ will review the applications on a week-to-week basis. And in phase one, we announced awarded projects in groups of 15, but they will be announced as a certain amount are awarded. If there are any changes to the schedule, we will provide the update on the Level 2 Public Access website. Speaking of the Level 2 Public Access website, the direct link to that is found on the slide. The website has the RFP and provides access to all the information that we covered today. If you have any questions going forward, you can search the website or send an email again to the daq.nc_VW grants email account. If you are not currently on our mailing list and would like to receive email updates about the Volkswagen Settlement Program, please send an email with the word subscribe in the subject line to the NC_VW grants email account. There are several resources and partners that worked with both the AQ and applicants in phase one. They're more than happy to work with us and with you again in phase two. Contact information for this list is available on the DAQ Volkswagen website. And something else that could assist you is a selection of phase one projects that were featured in success stories found on the phase one level 2 website. These success stories go into detail about the projects and the program itself, and they open a window into what a project could look like in phase two. The direct link to the level 2 program success stories website is found again right here on this slide. Here are your Volkswagen program contacts. Again, I'm Stephen Rice, the Level 2 Program Manager. We have Brian Phillips, the Mobile Sources Compliance Branch Supervisor and the Mitigation Plan Manager. And then Robin Barrows, our Allied Program Supervisor, who assists us with Volkswagen outreach. So that concludes the informational part of today's webinar. And now we will address questions collected in the Q&A box. our host will now attempt to enable the raise hand feature for those who called in to the webinar by phone. Again, pressing *3 will raise your hand, and pressing *3 again will lower your hand. All other attendees must use the Q&A box to submit questions. I would like to remind attendees that this is not an opportunity to comment on the implementation of the Volkswagen settlement, and that questions will need to pertain to the Level 2 Public Access Program. So at this time, VW team, I am ready to answer some questions.
Hi, Stephen. We have several questions in the chat already. The first one is, does a church parking lot qualify under this round of applications?
So a church parking lot, in order to qualify, first would be considered non-government property. So that is fine right there. And as long as that parking lot is available to the general public without any kind of restriction, any kind of barrier, for an annual average of 12 hours each day, then it would be a qualifying project.
And next question, am I understanding correctly that RFPs for condo units with public access parking will be issued at a later date?
Yes, that is correct. In phase 1, we kind of lumped together a bunch of different project types. We had a variety of eligible governments and application types that were for workplace charging, and in this question, multi-unit dwelling charging. For phase 2, we thought it beneficial to kind of spread out the funding to give people an opportunity to apply for a program that meets their specific charging needs. So the multi-unit dwelling RFP is a separate, that program is a separate to the general public access program. So if you are applying on behalf of a multi-unit dwelling, this program would not be for that type of project. I believe the RFP for MUDs is to be released either in May or in June.
Next question, is the NCID for an individual or for the organization?
The NCID would be for an individual. The NCID is kind of like an individual credentials. It's going to link to someone from an organization that submitted the EBS access request application and submitted the W-9 form. We want that NCID to be tied to someone from an applying organization specifically. So NCID is for an individual.
Next, here isn't a question, but a request to please reprint the 2 websites that we must have access to in order to make this application.
The first steps that need to be carried out to get access to the grants management system. Let me first say that a copy of the slides from today, as well as a recording of today's presentation, will be available on the website for anyone here that attended, for anyone that has not attended today, to access whenever it's convenient for them. So this information will be on demand in the near future, but this is the slide that provided information on obtaining an NCID. There is a guide here with a step-by-step process similar to the walkthrough that I did today. I'm sorry, that guide is right here. The website to obtaining your NCID is here. So if you were to go to this website, that would begin the process of getting an NCID. And then the next important step to gain access to the GMS is here. After you have your NCID, you need to complete the EBS request application. This is a screenshot of what it looks like, but again, it is linked here. This is something you can click or navigate to yourself. All the information in this request application must be entered, and then that application is to be submitted. As you submit that request application, you need to complete the W-9 for the organization. So again, NCID is for an individual of a particular organization. The W-9 will have the tax information of that organization. So that W-9 form needs to be submitted to the NCVW application website.
And Stephen, there's also a presentation and recording of a webinar for the grants management system currently available on our website.
That is correct. Thank you, Brian. A week ago from today, I hosted a presentation that's covered just the NCID process and the GMS process. We covered that again today in pretty good detail, but if you want kind of a snippet of just that particular information, the recording is available on the Level 2 Public Access webpage.
Okay, next question is just a request. Is it possible to have slides emailed to participants?
Brian, I don't see why not. We'll go through an internal process to make sure they're saved and all the information is definitely 100% as it should be. But if that's something that you want, I would just recommend to send a request either to that Volkswagen grants email address, or you could send it to myself directly, and we'll go through the proper process of providing you that information.
We have a lot of questions coming in pretty quickly here, so
That's
jumping
great.
to the next one.
Bring them on, Sean.
Yeah. Sorry. What is the average cost of a charging station? And also, where do we order these stations?
Well, the average cost is going to vary from vendor to vendor. The overall project cost is going to also depend on a bunch of different factors. What I can recommend is to contact, and I'll bring up that slide right now, some of our partners. Again, these partners got to see firsthand the beginning to the end process, and it's just people that applied in phase one. They would have a pretty good idea of what different charging companies would be able to offer you. And honestly, the best way to find out is to go looking for quotes. Again, we cannot recommend specific companies. There were a variety of vendors that were that had their chargers used in phase one. So my best advice would be to reach out to these resources and to reach out to different charging vendors to see which options out there best meet your needs.
Next question. How do we get latitude and longitude?
I'm pretty sure we told people you could just simply use Google. Anyone familiar with Google Maps allows you to select a particular point on using Google Maps, and that point should have a latitude and longitude. So if you know exactly where you would want to put your charger, just select that in Google Maps, and you are then you have access to the latitude and longitude. Other methods could be done internally. Some local governments might have. Oops, sorry about that. Everyone might have the ability to identify, specific lat long based on just where the public information they have. But I think Google Maps is kind of where we pointed people to in phase one.
Hey, Sean. Before you get started on the next question, this is Robin. I just want to remind everybody that we have close to an hour to answer questions for you, and we're happy to do that. But if we do run out of time, we will post answers to all of the questions that have been typed in the chat on our website after this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Next question. What if I am installing chargers in 2 different locations? Is that 1 application or 2?
So the answer to that is whatever you prefer, because we did have organizations in phase 1 submit 2 independent applications, even though that organization owned the property that each of these projects were on. That was perfectly fine. Or they other organizations chose to have multiple projects with multiple locations, all in one single application. And again, if I can pull up, in that case, if you're going to have multiple locations, on the first page of the application, you enter a single address. You only have one address option. But here on the rebate calculator worksheet, scrolling down to the bottom, you have the option to put additional site locations. So if you're going to include multiple locations in one single application, in this case, you would need to list at least the secondary, tertiary locations. Most people put the primary just because they're already filling out this section, but we would need to know each specific location where each charge would be. And again, I think this goes without saying, but each separate location, each distinct location would need to still be owned. That site, that property would still need to be owned by the organization applying.
Next, do the chargers need to be fully operational slash installed in order to apply for incentives? Or can you start this process prior to completion of install?
Something that was mentioned in the presentation is that when you are applying for one of these rebates, the project should not have started in any capacity. So if your organization is already in the process of purchasing and installing chargers, and you say, hey, maybe this is an opportunity to receive funding, that would not qualify. It would have to be a project that has not started in any capacity. When you supply documentation for review of the application, they need to be quotes, not invoices. You know, the difference is just one, the quote, you have not committed to anything, where an invoice means that you have committed something and are in the process of paying for it. Just make sure that any project that is included in the application has not started in any capacity.
Next question, do the 3 authorized reps get a copy of the submitted application, or only the person with the NCID?
So only individuals that have access to the GMS will be able to view the application. There's no requirement that someone entered in for those 3 positions are the 3 people that have access. That's completely up to your organization. But the answer is that only those that have access to the grants management system will be able to view and to edit an application for an organization. But I will say the individuals entered with those 3 positions if there is an email that needs to go out to the organization, those individuals receive the email. So they're essentially the contacts for the program. So as you decide who gets access to the GMS and who gets added as a contact for the project, just know those are the differences between the two.
Do the chargers allow users to pay a certain amount for using the charger?
So this program, just like in phase 1, does allow for people to charge for charging. The requirement for that is that the charger just has to have the industry standard of accepting multiple payment methods, specifically credit cards. It cannot be exclusively through an app or some kind of digital payment system. The amount that an organization charges for charging for the use of their charger is not dictated by any means by NCDEQ. That is completely the decision to, one, charge or not charge, and two, what the fee the per kilowatt hour would be. That's completely up to the organization.
Does each port need to always support 6.6 kilowatts or better? If two EVs are plugged into a CT Forte unit, the output is about 3.6 in ideal conditions.
Well, I think when we came up with those numbers, and that was based off of uh, the charger being provided, 40 amps. I know there are options out there when it's being installed for it to be lower, and then the output is lower, but the RP requirement is 6.6. That is something that is required at all times by any port.
Another question here, where do I find the slides from today? Do you want to say exactly where on the website we'll be posting that?
Sure. I have the website up. Hopefully everyone still sees my screen now that I'm just in a web browser. This is what the level 2 public access web page looks like. We have some photos from phase 1 projects, but the information from today will go all the way at the bottom. We'll have a new expandable window here for today's workshop. And if you were to expand it like I'm doing here, you would see a link or the actual embedded video and then a PDF copy of the slides. So if you're on the level 2 public access website, just scroll all the way to the bottom, look for today's workshop accordion, and the information will be right there.
Next question, just to confirm, we have to select a vendor you approve?
We don't have vendors approved, but we have charger requirements. So if a vendor is able to provide a level 2 charger that meets the requirements outlined in the RFP, that is acceptable to us. But we do not have a list of approved or disapproved vendors just in this standpoint of a company. It all depends on the requirements of the chargers that they provide.
Do any amenities need to be on site or close to site for funding similar to the DCFC program?
This is a little bit different than the DC Fast program. The RFP, hope I don't make anyone dizzy scrolling through this. I apologize in advance if I'm going too fast. Again, this is the RFP that is available in multiple places on the level 2 website. But when it comes to public access, we have the definition of public access right here. Again, this is important. If you know that your project will meet this requirement and it needs to meet this requirement, you can, again, incorporate this phrasing into your application. This is considered a proof of that. It is an attestment. But again, we have just in the RFP to be publicly accessible. The site must be convenient for users of the charging station. So there's nothing specific about amenities, but there is just this general, it must be convenient. It can't be in a place where there aren't particular, options or where it wouldn't be safe for all members of the public to be charging. And if we continue down to the site requirements, we do have here that sites must be easily accessible, adequately lit. And again, we talked about accessibility as it's found in the RFP. Definitely recommend going through and just making sure that the location that you have planned for your charger meets all of the site requirements.
Next, if a workplace is willing to make the chargers available to the public for 12 hours, does it qualify for public?
That would still be something that you could apply for when the workplace program application becomes available. There are definitions for what a workplace is. So if an organization wants to put a charger, let's say more of like at a place of work, but it's not intended for employees of that workplace, it's not intended for fleet charging, then it can still be considered public access. Further up in the RFP, we outline ineligible sites. Right here, locations ineligible for this program are found here. So again, where they're not providing access for the 12 annual hour average, where it's at an individual residence or multi-unit dwelling, or if it's locations specifically for employee or fleet charging only.
Do you have a list of vendors for level 2 chargers? I know that you can't recommend any specific vendor.
We do not have a list. There are multiple that do business in the state, and my recommendation is just to reach out to those public partners, or simply do. I don't want to be as fundamental as a Google search, but I think the options that are available to you are easy to find. Unfortunately, we do not have a list. I know for a fact that all of the different chargers that went into phase 1 projects are not the complete list of all level 2 charging companies. There are more out there that were used.
Next question. The financial calculation form provided space for multiple locations. However, the application appeared to only have space for one address. How would you enter information for multiple locations?
That is correct. The application tab only has one single address. If you have multiple addresses where you are going to have multiple chargers, this is the only place to enter them, and that's perfectly fine. That's by design. It's just important that if on your application in the project details, if we see something about multiple locations, multiple sites at different addresses, and then we don't see addresses here, your application will be returned and will specifically ask you to add that information here. If it's a project that has one single address, then all you need to do is fill out the information on the application tab. But for multiple addresses, anything other than what was entered in that tab needs to be entered in the spreadsheet. And while we're looking at the spreadsheet, I will point out the spreadsheet as a whole is something that can be used for the public access program and for the MUD and workplace programs. They are different calculators because there will be different needs between the programs. So when you're filling out this spreadsheet, the default tab is for public access. Just make sure that this is the tab that you are entering your information in. Again, if we see anything different, then we will need to return the application and you'll need to make that correction.
Next, does the parking area need to be paved or can it be rock?
In phase one, there are stenciling requirements, but not every project was done on blacktop. So I guess the answer to that is no. I don't believe that's something that we made as a requirement coming into phase two. So if it is on stone, if the charger location is not able to be paved within the scope of the time of the rebate, or if that's just not a desire of the organization that's applying, that is fine.
Next two questions are kind of the same. To check my understanding, can you please confirm that each individual up to 3 needs an NCID and the organization completes the EBS and substitute W-9? And then the next question was, do all 3 authorized on application need an NCID?
So all 3 authorized users will need unique NCIDs. So there's no sharing of NCID. An NCID is designed to be connected to one individual person. So each of the 3 people, up to 3 that are designated to access the grants management system on behalf of an organization, those 3 people will need 3 unique different NCIDs. And I'm sorry, Sean, what was the first question?
Yeah, so just confirm that each individual up to 3 needs an NCID and the organization completes the EBS and substitute W-9.
Yes, one of the 3 individuals from an organization who's going through the process of gaining GMS access, any one of those 3 people need to include the W-9. The W-9 does not, to my knowledge, need to be submitted 3 different times for 3 individuals. It just needs to be included for the one person. Is that still accurate, Brian? One W-9 for anyone of that organization?
That's correct.
Okay.
Next question. Our town manages a parking lot that is owned by our local county. How would that work if the town wants to apply for this grant?
Okay. So if the town, I just want to make sure, the town manages the park, but the park is property of the county. In this case, there are 2 main options. The first would be that the town approaches the county and says, we want you to apply for this. Because again, the property is of the county. In that case, the application would be done by the county and the chargers would ultimately be owned by the county. The town can assist the county in a variety of ways, but because the property is of the county would be completing the application and again would have ultimate ownership of these chargers. Another way to do it would be that third-party access authorization process where someone from the town, again, would approach the county with this opportunity. And the county says, we're interested and we want your involvement and we want you to apply on our behalf. Because, again, the property is county owned, that third-party access process would need to go through. The individual from the town would need the approval of the county to either apply or provide the documentation on behalf of the county. So in this case, someone from the town would be granted essentially status of working for the county within the grants management system because of the county's approval, and go through the process of applying, go through the process of doing the project. Ultimately, because in this scenario, the town member is still applying on behalf of the county, they are still county chargers and they are still county property. But those are two ways that the town could be involved with a project that ultimately would need to be done by the county.
Thanks. Next question, I believe you've answered this. The W-9 is for the institution. Do you have anything else to say with that?
No, that is correct. It's by the institution or the organization applying. When you open that file, that W-9 form, you'll see that there are red asterisks on that form. The information that's being requested that has the asterisks, hard to pronounce, sorry, is absolutely required, to the point where when you submit your EBS request application and then you submit that W-9, if that information, the required information is not present and complete, that will hold up the process of getting you into the grants management system. We want to make sure, since the W-9 is tied to the reimbursement process, that the reimbursement goes as smooth as possible. So it really is important to provide all the information, and that all that information is as accurate as possible when you supply that form.
Next question. If I am applying on behalf of an NC business, do they just need an NC ID, or do they also need to set up a GSA account?
So if I use a project from phase 1, for example, there was someone from an organization that applied on behalf of a town. The town itself did not have town employees with access to the grants management system by choice. That was the way that they wanted to handle it. The individual from this other organization approached the town, said, I would like to do a project on your behalf. The town provided the approval for us to say that this is okay, that he's acting as a contractor on behalf of the town. And this individual, was granted GMS access after submitting and completing the required documentation. So he entered himself as the authorized representative, the project manager, the financial manager. He was the sole person on behalf of the town to access the grants management system. Again, if that isn't how you want to do it, then you can do it differently. If you are fine, if you are a town, a city, some organization, that someone approaches you and says, this is an option for us, and you say, go ahead, do it yourself, we're fine with that, that's also an option. It really depends on the organization.
Next, are there certain chargers that are allowed, or can we select any we want? Specifically, must the charger allow credit card or e-payment, or can they be free to use? I believe we've answered that, but anything to add?
I'll pull up the RFP where we outline that portion in terms of payment. Again, it is up to the organization applying whether they want to provide free charging or to charge for charging. Payment options, here we go. So again, this falls under the equipment requirements in the public access RFP. There is a section specifically for payment options. again, I don't want to necessarily read it out loud for everyone, but it is here for you to review, and I'll leave this page up until I need to move on to show someone else something to help answer that question. But the requirements for payment options are right here in the RFP.
Great. Next, do you need the cost estimate of the project to file for the incentive?
Correct. There are a number of costs that, by incentive, I'm assuming you mean for a rebate. And yes, there are a number of different costs associated with a level 2 project. There's the cost of the chargers, there's the cost of the maintenance warranty, the service warranty, there's the cost of installation. Um, Again, there's a pretty wide spanning list of things that may or may not be uh, incorporated into the overall cost of your project. But when you apply, we are expecting that any cost that you know will be incurred on your part be included and ultimately entered into the rebate calculator so that we're able to offer a rebate if your project is approved and if we have money left to fund the project, so that it's as accurate as possible. I hope that was within the spirit of the question, Sean.
I'll let you know if they follow up.
Okay.
Next question. Can we preload our application prior to May 2nd and then submit on May 2nd?
No, May 2nd should be the first day that you are having any kind of access to the application. If you apply for grants management system access today and you get approved and can log in to the GMS next week, if you clicked create new application and searched for the level 2 public access, the link for the application should not be should not come up. If it comes up, we have a problem because it's been programmed to not be available into May 2nd. So for anyone that wants to kind of get a head start, that's not an option. Everyone gets to start at the same time. And again, I'll go back to our web page for the public access program. And I think I have it up, but I will go down under the materials. We have sample application and sample rebate calculator, and I do have it open right here. So if you take today's information, because we looked at the application page by page, tab by tab, everything that we're expecting was shown today. There shouldn't be any curveballs come May 2nd. And if you want to see the information or not, we left specific personal information out, but project information that would be required for a complete level 2 public access application, it is found in this sample application. You can scroll through. Again, kind of goes tab by tab what information would be necessary. We have this last page where the certification would be, and then down below, an example of what a completed rebate calculator would be. So the best way to get ahead is just to make sure you have all of your quotes, all of your documentation kind of ready to go. And we did see a lot of people submit an application kind of right off the bat when it went live in phase 1. So there's definitely is a way to prepare yourself so that you can apply as early as possible. And one thing I will point out, there's just over $1 million devoted to this program. And as I said earlier, this is kind of a subset of what was available in all of phase 1. All of phase 1 had $1.15 million. And now there's just over $1 million for public access charging projects. And we did not need to reject applications in phase 1 because of lack of funding. I'm not going to tell you when or how to apply, but for anyone that's concerned, if you don't apply within the first 15 minutes, that you're going to miss out. I just will say I find that that would be unbelievable. I don't think that should be a concern. I would definitely recommend investing more time and effort on having a complete application than a, hey, I got here first application.
Great. Next is a request. Is the list of phase 1 vendors available?
I believe we have a list of awarded projects. I don't think the vendors are included in that list. Again, my recommendation is to reach out to our local partners and they'll be able to point you in the right direction.
Next question. I have submitted the request for my NCID today. How long does it take to get the number?
I don't know if our team members that review and approve these want to chime in. I do think, well, I know that the applications for EBS access and GMS access are reviewed every day. I think it's only a couple days, typically between submitting the application and receiving the email that you have access. Again, I said it before, I'll say it again. The best way to ensure that it only takes a short amount of time is to do it earlier. Human nature says, I can wait to the last minute. Well, if everyone waits to the last minute, we cannot guarantee that come May 2nd, you have access to the GMS.
Yeah, just to confirm, when you submit an application to us, we are not the last stop in getting you access to the grant management system. It goes to an outside agency for review and approval. That can take up to a week. So like Stephen said, do not wait to the last week to submit your request for access. Like you said, we cannot guarantee you have access to the system by the time the application opens up.
Next, what is your definition of nonprofit? We are a POA, HOA, and are not for profit, but not a 501c3.
The best I can do is just take you to right here. Under the list of eligible applicants, the very first bullet point covers incorporated nonprofit. So if you meet this definition, then you are considered a nonprofit. And if you do not meet this definition, then you would not be. It's kind of a silly way for me to wrap it up, but that the definition for nonprofit is here in the RFP.
When will the presentation and slides be online?
The goal is as soon as possible. I think it's safe to say within the week. The recording of today's presentation is typically available in WebEx within an hour, and then however long it takes to review and convert the slides so that they are ready to be uploaded. That's not a terribly long process. You know, I wouldn't expect them by the afternoon, later today, but definitely I would think it's safe to say within the week if we're all working toward getting it available on the website, which I know we are.
Great. To be clear, next question asks, each port needs to be able to output at least 32A, meaning a 40A circuit at 208V/240V.
I know the requirements for the charger specs are in the RFP. Again, we talked about the 6.6 output while charging. But under the equipment requirements in the RFP, what we are expecting, what we are requiring from any proposed charger is found here. So my recommendation is just to review this material, and if the charger that you are interested in incorporating into your project meets these requirements, then you are good to go.
Next question. What is the history, if you know, of vandalism to these charging stations?
I personally don't know. Within the specific realm of Volkswagen, we have at this point 35 of the mid 70 awarded projects completed. None of them have said that, since their project was done, that they've experienced vandalism. I know we encourage people in the project details in the application to include any kind of internal security measures that you're willing to take. In short, that's not information that has been provided to me directly. And as I read the quarterly reports and the final reports, I have not seen anyone describe vandalism.
This question is just some additional context from the town asking about the town and county relationship question from earlier. That they just add that the town has a 25-year lease with the county. I'm not sure if that changes your answer at all.
While it's good to know, the answer is still the same. If the property is officially owned by the county will need some level of involvement and approval with any kind of project like that.
Okay. Next, the RFP includes requirements for the AVSE enclosure. Must these charging stations be covered or enclosed?
I mean, yes, the requirements that were kind of mentioned in the question, are found in the RFP. I can scroll down a little bit more. We do have additional, the EVSE enclosure. These are the standards that we are expecting each charger to meet. And any vendor, any level 2 charging company should have a spec sheet of their chargers. That's something, first of all, that should be highly recommended, added as an attachment to your application, so that as we look at a charger and say, oh, I've never heard of this company before, and if we do our homework and find that it's deficient by our research, then the application will be returned or rejected. But on behalf of the attachment, if that spec sheet shows that the charger meets all of the requirements, then we know, just based off the applicant using that attachment, that there is no grounds to return the application on the basis of the charging unit itself. So it doesn't matter if it's a very popular charger or a new to the market charger. We definitely would like to see some spec sheet information, some charger details as part of the attachments of your application.
Next, how would charging host agreements factor into this? For example, property owner does not pay for equipment or installation, only provides the property. Can the equipment owner apply?
The equipment owner, and I don't know if they mean the vendor of the equipment, or again any third party, but the organization that's applying is the organization that's to be reimbursed. And when it comes to reimbursement, we're going to need to see proof of payment made by the organization that applied. So it doesn't, there are a couple different combinations of how people from different companies and organizations can be involved in a single project, but at the end of the day, the organization that's reimbursed is the one that is granted, that individuals are representing behind an application, and the one that when we review a claim for reimbursement, we can see that checks were sent out on behalf of that organization. If we see something that doesn't match, if a company that paid for the charger is not the company that applied and was given the award and has the agreement with the state, there is going to be some serious questions and potentially issues with the reimbursement process.
This is the last question that we have right now. So I know we have about 10 more minutes if folks want to submit more questions, but this question is, where can I find that list of the partners you mentioned earlier?
Let's see. I believe. I hope I don't get stumped on the very last question. And Brian, if you know I'm in the wrong spot.
So, hi guys, this is Robin again. It is in the slide deck that will be available online. Because Stephen put it in the slide deck. So if we can't find it online, then it'll definitely be in that slide deck.
Yeah, I do know that there is.
Yeah, I think you need to go to the program page. Keep going down. It's in the drop downs.
Okay.
Application.
Yeah, additional, I went the long way about it, Brian. Thank you for helping me there. But yes, on the level 2 webpage, I doubted myself and got proved wrong. The resources that we have for the various organizations that were listed in the slide can be found here. These are some direct contacts that we worked with in phase 1, and that would be more than happy to work with you in phase 2. And again, I'll just go back to where it was on the website, under the application, drop down additional resources.
No other questions at this time.
Okay.
Stephen, you may
Yes.
want to mention when they are looking for us, if nothing else, you can always use Google and search NCVW settlement. We are the very top thing under Google, NCVW settlement.
Okay. Well, instead of regurgitating that, I will just show everyone that NCVW settlement. If you do just a simple search, the Volkswagen settlement main page is the first that comes up. If you want to be more specific and say level 2, there's information on the level 2 program. You see here that it is phase 1. So maybe to be super specific, phase 2. And this is where I was before. But if you scroll, now you have the general level 2 program and the specific sub programs. The RFPs right now for the state agency program and the public access program are out. And as I mentioned before, the multi-unit dwelling and the workplace programs are yet to be released.
One person says, thank you so much for this great information.
Well, to that one person and to anyone else that shares that sentiment, I say thank you. I'm more than happy to talk about, phase two and also the experience of phase one. And just with no more questions and with just kind of 5 minutes to spare, I'll say I really appreciate everyone's attendance today, and I hope you found this webinar worthwhile. I also want to thank everyone on the VW team for their help on the presentation and in the webinar today. Again, thank you for everyone's time, and we look forward to working with you in phase two. Have a great rest of the day.
I do have one question here.
Question
Came
at
in about
at the
a copy
buzzer.
of the questions. The Q&A will be posted later.
Yes, that is the case. We will have the questions and the answers from today's presentation, from today's webinar, available with the recording and with the presentation slides.
Great. Thanks, Stephen. That's
Okay.
it.
All right. Wonderful. Again, thanks everybody, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.